Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Phil here with a breakdown of my composition, The Rise of Orion, in all its 7 minute plus glory here. For those of you who don't know, I had written this piece and posted it a few weeks ago and shared it with on my Facebook page. And a lot of you seemed to really enjoy it and did want to see a breakdown of how this is done. So that's what this video is all about. It is meeting the demand of said public. So what you'll be able to get from this video is how all this stuff is possible through the software that I'm using and the patches and sample libraries that I have either purchased or downloaded from different companies, and how it is all done. Technology has advanced so much in the last few years, especially when it comes to music production and engineering. It is so much more accessible now than it has ever been. Same with video production as well. There's a lot of amazing independent films out there and a lot of amazing series on Netflix and Amazon and Hulu that are being made that are absolutely movie quality. If you would have gone back in time and told people 15 years ago that this is what it was going to be, they would be shocked. I'm still shocked at how amazing some of this technology is and what's possible, what the capabilities are of somewhat reasonably priced software and patches and sample libraries. So given that, let's go ahead and dive right into what's happening here. So the platform that I'm using here, this program is called Studio One. It is developed by a company called Presonus. This is version 4, I believe. This is Professional 4. They do have a free version of this software that you can get started on if this is something that interests you. They do have a Studio One artist package, which has a lot of features. I decided to upgrade to the professional because they do have a lot of great plugins that come with this software. It is absolutely amazing what you can do with this, and it is comparable to Pro Tools, Logic, even GarageBand is an example of what's called a DAW, a DAW for digital audio workspace. That's the short for DAW, or DAW is short for digital audio workspace, rather. And that's what this is right here. So Presonus is amazing. I've known of engineers who have switched from Pro Tools to Presonus, and the switch to this software is actually not that bad, with a few exceptions here and there. So given that, it is the perfect program for my efforts here and other composers as well. It's not very commonly used. Logic is usually the one that is used more often because most composers that use this type of programming are Mac users. I'm just a PC guy because I'm one of those nerds. So the computer that I'm running has about 16 gigabytes of RAM. It does have a solid state drive, but I also have a few external drives that are running this as well. Very powerful computer. It is a the Predator series. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm forgetting the brand of computer. Hold on one second. It is It is a Predator Helios 300. So I'm running this on about a $1,500 to $2,000 computer. The hardware with it is fantastic. It's a very fast laptop. It's phenomenal. I've got a YPG 235 Yamaha keyboard that's controlling all the notes down here, as well as an Akai MPK Mini for when I want to go out on the road, or if I want to add a more human touch to some of the effects that come with the sample library, or that's within the software. So now that that's all squared away and taken care of, and you have an idea of the basic form and structure that all of this is contained within, let's get into the more nitty-gritty stuff. So you're probably seeing a lot of colors and a lot of bars and lines and stuff like that. So you can see that I've organized it like this. So I have folders in my DAW here that have brass, strings. Let's zoom in a little bit. So you can see that I have brass, strings, woodwinds, percussion. Let's keep going here. Voice and effects and keys. Now, this song, this project in particular, does not actually have that many tracks. There's a lot of layering, there's a lot of stacking, and there's a lot going on chord-wise in each instrumental part. But it's actually pretty light, and that's thanks to the sample libraries that I'm using. One being Sonoscore's The Orchestra. That is a phenomenal sample library for the price, number one, and number two, for the light load it has on your hard drive. It is only about 6 to 8 gigabytes of information, and I'm actually astounded by the quality of sound in comparison to the price and the footprint as well on your hardware. It doesn't take up that much memory. It's very, very good. And then I'm also using East West, the gold subscription, which has a little more load time, and it does take up quite a bit of space on the RAM. But it is good. The quality of the sound is pretty nice if you're patient enough to let it load. So that is primarily what I'm using with these patches, and we'll get into more of that in detail. We'll get a chance to see those patches and how they're connected to everything. But just to give you an idea of what's happening in each section, you can see I have like different numbered trumpets, French horns, trombones, and low brass, and the same thing with the strings, the percussion, and the voice, and they're all tied to a certain instrument. But in order to control that instrument, you have to program that instrument to do what you want it to do. So, for example, let's use the trumpets, trumpets 3 as an example here. You can see that there's bars and lines and all kinds of stuff. So why don't we go ahead and zoom in on this specific part right here. So I just clicked on that. Let's bring this in. Let's actually solo this out so that way you can hear this out of context from the rest of it. So and then let's also introduce the patch that these bars and that this programming right here. As you can see, there's different lines and stuff. This is determining the volume of the longer phrases. Let's take a listen to it out of context to get an idea of what these bars and what these lines are doing to the instrument. And then I'll click on the instrument to show you those controls. So give me just a second and I'll do that too. All right. Yeah, clicking on the instrument. All right, bringing this over. Okay, this is an East-West Gold subscription patch. So let's take a look at which instrument it's controlling. All right, it's controlling the 3 trumpet sustain light. Cool. And you can hear that these lines are controlling the volume of this instrument. And these bars are programmed by me playing these on the keyboard. Now, it's pretty amazing what you can do. Yeah, and there you go. It's nice swells and all that good stuff being determined by these lines. All right, so let's stop there just for a second. Okay, so that gives you an idea of what that patch sounds like. And we'll play that in context with the rest of the music here. But as I said before, these lines, these bars, they are controlling this specific patch and this specific sample library. And as you can see, I have all these patches up here, which I'll get into in greater detail at some point, hopefully in this in this video. So now, given that, the way that it's controlled, I have my keyboard down here, and all I have to do in my DAW, and this comes pretty standard, is enable this programming thing here. And say that I wanted to add like a line or two. I'm hitting. Let's do this and see if this works. So. So I've just added those lines, and now because it's structured with the metronome and it's structured with the bars of music, let's see what that sounds like in context with the rest of the piece here. So I've just added these with the program enabled, so that way you're just piecing it together like a puzzle piece. Here we go. So you see, I just added that program right there with my keyboard hitting certain keys. Now I'll just delete that. But that was just to give you an example of how this is done. It can be either played live as you're recording it, or you can just, patch it together like I just did. And that's what I did for most of this, is just patching everything together and then using my mouse to drag and drop or to alter the rhythm or modify it, reform it so that way it fits in better with the grid. And the grid being, these numbers right here, you can see the grid, and these bars, the length of them represent the amount of time that you're playing. You can see that you've got your whole notes, your half notes, your quarters, your eighths, your 16ths, your 24ths, and your 32nds. And then you have triplet, quintuplet, septuplet, dotted. I really like the setup that Presonus has for the MIDI programming. They have some really, really nice and really, I would say, user-friendly controls here. So now let's go ahead and unmute this, save it, and take a listen to it in the context of the rest of the piece. Hold on 1 second. Sorry. So the reason why it sounds wonky right now is because some of the key switches were not activated. And key switches being, let's take a look here at the low brass. Okay, so we looked at the low brass. You see these like teeny tiny little blocks right here. If the pitch is too low, let's click on the instrument here. If the pitch is like super low and doesn't, well, let's disregard what I just said. Okay, you see these blue keys right here? That's the range of the instrument that's highlighted in orange right here, the low brass. Okay, so you've got like, that's the lowest that it goes right there. Okay, so and then these red keys control the articulation of the instrument. So right now, sustain is activated by the C sharp key right here, and then you have staccato and marcato, which can be activated by these key switches right here, which this bar right here represents. It is activating, C sharp 0 is activating the sustain key switch. So you understand right there? So it's that little bar right there is making it so that way these bars play as a sustain rather than a marcato and a staccato. And then you scroll this over and you see that there it's activated again as a C, as a sustain. And then look, there's a key switch for a staccato. See, you can even see it. Like I'm clicking on that, sustain. Clicking on that, staccato. Boom, boom. They're connected. Isn't it a beautiful thing? Okay, so that gives you an idea. Let's go ahead and close this and play it in context with this part right here. This is like one of my favorite. This was like super, super fun to write, especially at this part. So let's give it a shot here. All with a keyboard and technology. It's a little terrifying. So all that stuff, it sounds very complex. It's all just layered, putting puzzle pieces together, making sure everything sounds good. You obviously, before diving into this, having a good understanding of basic music theory and also orchestration is probably a good thing. You want to know how to write for each section. One thing that you do want to keep in mind, especially with the lower instruments. Let's go ahead and click on this patch right here. You see how spread out these are and how I'm not adding fifths all the time for those of you who are understand music theory and understand what I'm saying here. So there's a lot of space in between these parts as opposed to, say, the French horns and the higher parts of that. So you see there's a lot more stacking going on with the French horns because they're a middle to high instrument. And if you want to go into further detail, I'm not going to dive crazy into this and spend a lot of time on the music theory, but I just at least wanted to touch on it. If you want to do more research about orchestration and music theory, go ahead and do so. I will be talking about the structure of the song hopefully by the end of this, but so yeah, we've covered the fact that the lines represent certain programming, which what we've seen so far is that's modulation. For the shorter parts, you heard the modulation, which is represented by these crazy lines right here. They don't usually control that. That's usually controlled by what's called the velocity. Now, there's nothing happening with that in this, so this patch. So that's bad representation. Let's go to the French horn part. Yeah, right here, for example. Okay, so you see this part right here. That's all super short triplet notes. The key switch down here is activating the staccato for the low brass, I believe. Yeah, is this a low brass or is this French horn? It's French horn. Sorry. 1 second. Yeah, there's the French horn. Okay. So you can see that this is this key switch is activating the staccato, sustain, staccato right there. And to make this completely clear, you see the velocity. You see these like different bars and stuff like that. That usually, the velocity usually controls shorter notes. So let's take a listen to that out of context. And usually modulation has nothing to do with that. As you can see, there's no controls from the modulation. But as soon as it goes back to, and I don't know why I have modulation here, but I definitely bring it back when the legato is, and you see, if the key switch doesn't activate, it sounds like that. It sounds crappy. It's like, bleh. It thinks it's a sustain until you pass the key switch. Sounds realistic. There we go. So key switching is such a huge aspect of making things sound realistic. You want to make sure that you know when to key switch and how to key switch. You want to know your articulations and what each articulation means. So, and usually most patches make it pretty easy to navigate that. And they come with multiple articulations, either as separate instruments or it's all packed into one. I like to pack it all into one and have key switches. That's just the way that I like to roll. But some old school composers that have been using this since the dawn of this type of programming, like to have every single one separate. It just means a ton more tracks and just a lot more programming that in this context is really not that necessary. So yeah. So but then you get to the legato, and that's like this teeny tiny little key switch right here. I love the legato patch that's provided by the orchestra for their French horns and trombones. It is absolutely amazing. I wish I could say the same for their string legato patch. So they have amazing updates. They have amazing free updates and also reasonably priced upgrades. So I'm hoping to God someday that the orchestra, that Sonoscore will decide to upgrade the sound of its legato string patch to match the quality of its French horn and trombone legato patch. So let's take a listen to that in context. All right, let's do it. Here we go. All right, so all this is happening at once. Yeah. And just to be clear, so this, yeah. So you can see that it's a more ethereal part in this section right here, to replace the legato patch of that Sonoscore has. I'm using the East-West Gold subscription, and let's take a look at that patch out of context. I do like the sound of the violin legato, so let's take a listen to that. Why? I'm not programming the modulation here. Okay, that's a really bad example because I'm not really programming the modulation there. That's weird. Oh, well, let's go here. Yeah, it goes down a little bit. All right, there we go. Yeah, you can see how the modulation is controlling that. And that's velocity that has nothing to do with the legato patch because of how long the notes are. So, yeah, you can see that out of context, it sounds pretty nice. It has it has vibrato, which is missing from the legato patch that Sonascore has. So, East, West, Gold, good job. Nice stuff. Let's put that in context. Cellos are doing some staccato stuff there. Nice build. Oh, and one of my favorite things. All right. I gotta stop right there. Now, this is a shout out to Daniel Balaam, which I hope I pronounced your name correctly, sir. This is an immensely talented composer that I've had the honor of corresponding with on an occasional basis, who is currently working as an assistant composer for Junkie XL. If you don't know who that is, look him up. He is a frequent collaborator with Hans Zimmer on quite a few movie scores that are out there. Junkie XL is a big name in the industry. And Daniel Balaam is now working with him. And so congratulations to him, and kudos to him for this awesome little tidbit that I got from his channel on one of his videos. So one thing that he said is that if you want to fill the space of your composition, if you want it to sound more realistic, adding gongs and cymbals usually does the trick. It's usually something that will help fill out the room, along with making sure, and let's get into the mix. You can see there's a bunch of tracks and buses and all that stuff. And if I were more, I'm way more organized now than I was before. When I was writing this composition, I probably would have made this a lot more streamlined, but it still sounds good. It still does the job. It's not perfect, but it's here. Here's the reverb patch that all these channels are. There's a little bit of signal from each channel going to this reverb patch to make it all sound like it's in the same room. And so that just gives you an idea of what the reverb sounds like right there. It sounds like it's in a room. Obviously, it's not all the, like, yeah. So that's just the reverb patch by itself. So as I was saying, the reverb in conjunction with, let's unsolo that and solo this, in conjunction with a gong or like a cymbal scratch, something like this, which is like super quiet. It just adds tension and realism, authenticity, and then it gets louder. It just gives that. And this is, yeah. And the part, like this part right here, there's a lot of tension in this part. So let's listen to it with, and then let's take it out. So yeah, it's adding that tension. So I just absolutely love that patch. Now let's take it out of context. And I think actually it sounds like there's a missing patch here. I think it's this one. Aha. Yep. All right, let's take a look here. Aha. There we go. Yep, now it's triggering correctly. Yeah, that's what I thought. All right. Yeah, it doesn't sound right. Yeah, there's the staccato in the brass parts. Damn it. All right, this should be good. All right, now it should sound right, I think. No. That's damn it. That's okay. That's the reason why old school composers are sometimes right, because now I have to go back and find the key switches in order for it to all sound right. Finally, there we go. Yeah, that sounds good. So we're taking it back. Now I'm gonna take the cymbal out and see if you can hear the difference. So nice part right here. An ode to James Horner, Titanic, Braveheart, that guy. Lots of chimes, lots of choirs and stuff like that. All right, let's take the cymbal out. It's nice, it's clean, it still adds suspense. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Yeah. Still sounds pretty epic, but now let's put the cymbal back in there. Ah, crap! 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 Damn it. Sorry, everybody. Alright, here comes that cymbal. Alright, that's the... There's the cymbal. There's the harmonic. Yeah, it just makes it so much more epic. Yeah. Oh God. So like I have such a an unhealthy obsession and relationship with with the percussion that comes from East West Gold, especially their cymbal and gong patches. They're absolutely amazing, and I love them. Just to give you some context. Love it, love the tension that builds, and in a world that's dominated by samples and sample libraries and patches with all kinds of whooshes and whoms and all that stuff, which is all great stuff. There's some amazing libraries out there. It's always super cool just to use those types of rises and tension builders within the context of an actual live orchestra. So that way you're not looking for anything outside of the spectrum that an actual live orchestra could really do. And that's one of my dreams, really, is for this piece to be performed by an orchestra. That would, like a live orchestra, that would be amazing. As you can see, I'm getting more and more excited as we get into the piece and as this video keeps going, because I've been running into a lot of technical issues or logistical issues trying to put this video together, and it's finally happening, and I'm so happy. And if you're still watching, that's amazing. Thank you so much. So, all right, let's keep going here. Why isn't anything happening? All right, there we go. Another cymbal thing. It's gonna be like a zing. Here we go. Love it. The choirs. Choir patches from East West Gold are also absolutely beautiful. They just really have a nice tone to it. So. Na. There's that legato patch for the French horn. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Super nice. Super nice patches. We'll get into the epic section here coming up, and we'll pick up where we left off. But again, I always get so impressed with the technology and how far it's come, listening to what's capable now. If I'm like a kid in a candy store. I've been composing ever since I was a little kid. For those of you who don't know, I won a composition contest when I was in 5th grade with a piece called Shadow Creatures of the Night. And I grew up in a musical family, so with that said, my dad was able to arrange and orchestrate what I was able to dictate to him, because I didn't really have an understanding of like I was able to read music in bass clef, but for those of you who understand the jargon, awesome. If not, you can skip ahead. I don't want to bore you too much, but I was able to read bass clef and a little bit of treble clef. But as far as like writing for different clefs for like saxophone and clarinet and some other instruments that go outside of concert tuning, as opposed to like tuba and cello and certain string instruments, I just like told him the pitches. I told him how long I wanted it to be, and I didn't know how to write it down. So he was just essentially dictating what I wanted it to be. And we submitted that, and I won first place, and it was awesome. And the reason why I'm saying this is, if I had the technology then that I have now, that would have never been an issue. Now, obviously, for the most part. Now, obviously, there's a lot of a learning curve with this technology, and I learned a lot in college about music theory and how certain things are structured. Took some composition classes while I was a composition major for a semester. So shout out to Dr. Eggert for his guidance on that. And of course, Dr. Lister and Dr. Meekum and Dr. Snyder, Professor Steiner, and all of the other staff at Lebanon Valley representing. Love you guys. Yeah, it's just the only regret that I have is that I wish I would have found out about this and dove into this much sooner than I already have. I've only just been doing this since 2017. But it's better late than never. So, let's keep going. And just to give you an idea of what's happening here, tempo is slowing down. As you can see, this is the tempo map. Most of it was at 88 BPM, slowing down to 75. Just give it that epic. Lot going on here. Lots of layering. Yeah, there's all of it. So much stuff. So much damn layering. Here comes another cymbal thingamajiggy that I'm obsessed with. As you can see, I could probably brush up on my conducting skills, but still, there's probably a little bit of a delay with the program that I'm using. The reason why I was laughing is because I have never clicked on all the MIDI, and look at this ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Probably okay. Most composers would probably look at this and be like, this is a disgusting, ridiculous cluster of just obscene programming. because it just looks like it looks so complex and crazy. And I'll tell you what, I know that especially in this section right here, when it gets like super epic in this area, there's probably some composers that would point out the fact that it sounds like a pipe organ and that the pipe organ effect is happening. Well, there is no pipe organ happening here. And though some of you may frown upon that, I honestly don't give a flying crap, especially considering the fact that, you know, if I were to put an organ in here, I think it would actually fit phenomenally well. So, you know what? Sometimes having that pipe organ effect is actually really cool, and it adds a lot of epicness. So it's all about bending or breaking the rules, as Hans Zimmer likes to say, in certain contexts. So yeah, you can see, and I select, just to give you an idea what I did, I selected all the MIDI, clicked on it, and there's all the programming. So let's click off of that and then back to the like a regular patch. So that way it's not too confusing. Okay, so let's go over some of the general stuff with this piece. First and foremost, it is about 7 minutes and 8 seconds long. The reason why it sounds realistic, as I said before, is more realistic is because it's all being patched to a reverb patch that makes it all sound like it's in the same room. Otherwise, it wouldn't have that same depth. Another thing that Daniel Balaam, and not to be, you know, not to concentrate on so much on what this guy says, but he has some really good good suggestions. And I don't know if I did. Yes, I did a little bit. So for this patch right here, I tuned it a little sharp. Just to give it a little bit more edge. Let's see if I did that for any of the other patches. It looks like I didn't do that for that. Did I do it for the strings at all? Yes, so a little bit of fine tuning here to give it just a little bit more tension and to make it sound a little out of tune, so that way it sounds more realistic. That's another thing that you can do. That's what I'm doing here with this fine tuning. It's just making it just slightly sharp, a couple cents off, just to make it sound actually more organic. Yeah, so, and there's different like reverbs that are being used on, that are available through the actual patches and sample libraries that you can activate. But just to tie it all together, there's like, you know, compression channels and parallel compression channels and a mixing chain and a master chain. And at the end of everything is I'm using Ozone 7 from Isotope to make everything just, you know, sound the way it's supposed to, and get it to the levels that it needs to be at. It's a mastering software that I've used for releases that Small Town Titans have done that we've self-produced. It's a good mastering software overall. I really enjoy it. And also some of the plugins that I use, there's free stuff. Like, for example, this is a good plugin for just warming up the compression. The Quadracom is a free plugin as well. I use this religiously to cut out some of the mud and bring up the higher mids and the high tones here. This is the Quadracom mastering processor free plugin. It is a free plugin, one of the best free plugins that I have ever downloaded in my entire life. It really clears up the mud in a mix and really gives it some pizzazz for a mix right before it hits the mastering software. So yeah, so that gives you a rundown of the piece. It gives you a rundown of what's happening with the technology, and it gives you a rundown of how this is done. So to conclude this video, I guess I should go into the reason why I wrote this. So given that it's if you've ever heard of the constellation Orion, there's a lot of beautiful mythology that's associated with that constellation, and the mythology being that Orion was a great hunter, and is actually right next to the constellation Taurus. So there is a constant battle between Orion and Taurus, and Scorpio is also relatively close in that vicinity of the sky as well, I believe. I may not be right about that, but I do know about Taurus and Orion. And Orion's belt is actually quite important as well, because if you follow the line of Orion's belt, the trajectory, it leads to a star that is called Sirius, which is also known as the dog star. And if you follow that trajectory from Orion's belt to the dog star Sirius, you will see in the northern hemisphere, in the east, exactly where the sun will rise in the wintertime. If you follow that trajectory, that'll lead you to the line where the sun will rise the next day. It actually has a lot of ties to the winter equinox and the way that the sun comes back from the shortest day of the year, the longest night, that being the shortest amount of daytime and a longer night in the northern hemisphere. And Orion is a big piece of that. If you want to go even further and look into how Orion's belt may or may not be related to Egyptian culture as well, go ahead and take a look at that. It's a constellation that has been prevalent in my life and has fascinated me ever since I was a child. So yeah, it's pretty good stuff. It's pretty cool stuff. So yeah, and there's Greek mythology, there's Egyptian culture and mythology that's tied to it. Even it's the context of Orion, whatever name it might go by, whatever culture it might be a part of, it has great significance and across cultures, and there's a lot of ties between cultures that maybe lead to a possible ancient connection that we are not even aware of as in mainstream that mainstream historians and scientists have yet to acknowledge, that some have already acknowledged. If you go on the Joe Rogan podcast, if you're a fan of that, I recommend checking out Graham Hancock. He's got a lot of really interesting ideas. Whether or not you agree with all of them or not, it's really up to you. And it's a series called Magical Egypt. Really, really interesting and compelling evidence to back up the idea that that our ancestors may not have been as simple-minded as they seem to be portrayed. They don't seem to be as simple-minded as our education system and as the mainstream portrays. So, yeah. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get into the structure of the song. So the main theme, first and foremost, it's in the key of A minor, and the main theme is da 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 da, and then the secondary theme is da 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 ba 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 ba. So those two themes run together and are prevalent throughout the entire piece in certain sections. As you can hear, let's take this back here for a second. Okay, so you have the intro, which is in A minor, which is in the key of the piece for the most part. So starts with the ba 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 ba. So it starts with that main theme, and then we'll skip some of this. It builds on that theme, and then ends with the ba 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 ba. And then you've got this. Oh, and the da 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 da. That's also a running theme in this as well, which signals the end of one section going into the next section. And there's the second theme, very first time that it comes through. So we've gone from A, ba, and now we're in C minor. See if you can pick up. I want to go into further detail on a bigger picture thing. So now it's in C, and then it stays in C for a while until it reaches... Let's see. All right, I'm skipping ahead a lot. All right, that's the end of the C section. As you see, I skipped ahead quite a bit. C section, as in the letter C, not the cesarean section. Which I was, by the way. Love you, Mom. Miss you. Now we're in the F minor category. then after this section, which I'm going to stop, so that goes on for a while, and then moves on to... So it's coming out of the F section. Now it goes into the E minor section. And this plays for a while, and then it all comes back to A minor at this part coming up, which is that big build up at the end, reintroducing the main theme in a much more crazy way. And then, of course, the ending here, the absolute ending, brings back that ba, 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 which started the whole thing. Now, the bigger structure and the way that this is all, the big picture here, when you zoom out, you may realize that the theme da 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 is C F E A. So each section, it starts at A, and the main theme, of course, is da ba ba ba, but the A theme goes on for a couple minutes, and then it moves on to C minor, and then it moves on to F, then it moves on to E for a little bit, and then back to A. So it is a macrocosmic element of the piece. It's a little Easter egg. Well, little. I mean, it's a pretty big Easter egg that's right under the nose of the listener that you may or may not pick up on, but I just gave it away just now. So each section, whether it's 2 to 3 minutes long, rather, signifies the main theme, which is da 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 da. So, which was a lot of fun to work with and to try to structure. When I was writing this, I didn't know that I was going to do that at the time, but as things developed, I realized, that's how I could develop this. I could, make each section just like a subset of the main theme, just like, make it much bigger and expand upon that and kind of hide it in the arrangement and the composition of this piece. And that's exactly what I did. And it turned out to be so much fun and so it's so much fun to write this piece and to share it with the world. And with that said, I think that brings a good conclusion to this video. Thank you for entertaining my blabbing and the ranting about this. I hope that there was somewhat of a structure to this little lecture and breakdown here, and that all of it makes sense, all of it ties together, going from the how and the what of the technology to the why of why I wrote it the way that I wrote it. And if you have any questions about some of the jargon that I'm using, like I said, look up musictheory.net. That'll give you some definitions as to some of the terms that I'm using. If you're having an issue with understanding what I'm talking about as far as the software is concerned, I encourage you to take some of the terms that I've used in this video and go to Google, type in whatever word you don't know what I was talking about, and type in definition, so that way you get an idea of what the jargon means. Whatever, like for example, MIDI programming, or sample library, or sample patch and stuff like that, or DAW even, if you want more clarification on what that is and what's out there, please feel free to do so. Again, just wanted to thank you all for watching this, and also a huge shout out to my fiance for her patience on allowing me to do this and testing this out, and to my dog Jackson. They're visiting family at this very moment while this is being recorded, which is giving me a chance to do this video. Thank you so much for your patience for waiting for this to happen. There were so many technical issues and logistical issues that I was running into up to this point, and now it's finally here, and it's awesome. So, and even more awesome, the fact that you took all this time to watch this breakdown and see how it's done. And I hope you found it entertaining. I hope that you are inspired to create yourself if this is something that interests you. And feel free to ask any questions, or better yet, if you're somebody who has some experience in this, or is even in the professional field. I am still learning. I still consider myself very green when it comes to this stuff, and I would be so happy to hear some feedback from those of you who have been doing this for a while, and either on a semi-professional or professional scale. So thank you so much, everybody. Again, this is Phil Freeman, and this was my breakdown of my composition, The Rise of Orion, which you can find in a link in the description of this video if you want to listen to the entire thing. And with that said, blessings, light and love, peace and love. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.